All right, I think we should go ahead and get started. Thank you everyone for joining today's collaborative webinar about the real estate market, proven marketing strategies that perform. My name is Matt, and I'm the CEO of Xara, and our special guest today, our industry expert, is Melanie Grey. Hi, Melanie.
Hi.
And then we also have Alfonso Sica, who is the product marketing manager at Xara, and he will be manning the Q&A. So we do have a live Q&A going, and we'll do our best to answer questions during the session, after the session, but also in real time as well as things come up. So as I mentioned, I'm the CEO of Xara, and we'll touch a little bit on Xara at the end of the session. But we are Xara's a software company that provides marketing solutions for the real estate industry. Melanie, please introduce yourself.
Of course, my name is Melanie Grey, and I'm the owner and creative director at 4th Street Creative, which is a marketing company that teaches realtors how to build their personal brand. And we do that with tools, with templates, with trainings, so that you can build a brand that has major impact and attracts the clients that you want to work with.
Fantastic. Melanie has a lot of great content today, so let's jump right into it. So what are we going to cover today? We're going to talk a little bit about what we see happening in the real estate market. A lot of that, there's some numbers, but a lot of it is just what we hear across the clients that we work with. So kind of what I would call channel checks. We're talking about branding and why that matters, especially in today's environment. Talking about what probably is the biggest topic of all is getting leads and listings and strategies that help you perform better in the marketplace. Then we're going to talk about some of the demands on marketing and challenges. And then, as I mentioned, there will be a Q&A at the end, but we will do our best to do it live. So use the Q&A section, please. So in the webinar console. So let's jump right into it. Let's talk about what's happening today in 2023, and kind of more importantly, what we hear across our wide variety of customers in the real estate market. And as everybody knows, we're nearing the peak, especially in the US market, of interest rates getting much closer to 7%. And I think the consensus is we're probably going to get there pretty quickly. But that being said, they're still not the all-time highs, and there is, in the short term, they're going to be high, but there is an expectation that the interest rates are going to fall, which obviously has a big impact on consumer perception and cost of course. So, but as we get into that, buyer demand has dropped dramatically. Overall, the sentiment, as we know, and even you hear it on the news, and if you watch news these days, you hear it all over. And the housing market is always a big driver that people like to talk about as it comes to news. And that being said, when we talk to our customers, it's very market specific. So we've had a few clients where they're not moving a lot of property because there's a lot more buyers than actually sellers at this time, in terms of because of price suppression, or just they're not sure where they're going to go next or what they're going to do next. And on the flip side, just an anecdote in my own personal is that my family's from California. My mom actually just sold her house within 1 week. It took from time of listing to 1 week of showing to multiple over listing prices, and it was sold.
Wow.
I think that's probably a little bit unique, but it's one specific market. On the other hand, we hear from people in other environments where it's just flat or dead. And this is, I think, later in the presentation really comes to play about what are the things that you should be doing in the real estate market when buying and selling isn't happening as quickly as it's happened, especially over the last few years. Melanie, you have anything to chime in some of your checks?
This is, you know what, this is definitely not my area of expertise, but this is what I do know. I know what I read in the papers. And right now what I'm hearing the most is that buyers are kind of holding off making purchases because they're waiting for for things to drop, for the pricing to drop.
Yeah.
So that's what I just read that yesterday. Oh, you're going to
Yeah.
go on to that. Yeah. Sales have
Yeah,
declined.
exactly. Perfect
Mhm.
segue. And sales have declined significantly. As we know, they're down. Resales are down 34% year over year. And I think that's specifically ties to what you're talking about. But it's very interesting. Consumer behavior is shifting very dramatically. And obviously, overall consumer confidence is way down right now. But on the other hand, it's slowly rising, as exactly what Melanie said, is prices are finally starting to drop. Where in San Francisco, for the first time, I think it is in 15 or 20 years, selling prices are now below listing prices, right? And
Mhm.
coming from San Francisco, I've never even seen that before. So
Wow.
that really then gets buyers' confidence up that, hey, now is probably a better time for me. I might be getting a better deal, whatever that thing is that triggers for them. But that confidence is starting to tick. And I'm sure there's everybody on this webinar today has their own stories about their markets that would support or maybe contradict some of these in that aspect. And we're in a very fluid market as it relates. So now we have a foundation a little bit. Now let's talk about branding. And I'm going to pass it over to you, Kim, and tell everybody what they should be doing.
Me, Melanie?
I'm sorry. Did I say Kim? I'm sorry, Melanie.
I was like, wait, who's Kim? Is
I
there somebody else
apologize.
here?
Kim is our marketing manager at Xara, who led this whole thing.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I apologize.
It's all
Melanie.
good. I forgive you. I forgive you. Okay, so let's talk about branding for real estate and why that matters and how that even relates to what we were just talking about. The thing about creating a personal brand as a realtor is that it doesn't matter what kind of market we're in. By creating your personal brand, you get to show up in a way that's different than everybody else and attract your specific audience to you. And whether we're in a market where, like right now where it's a buyer's market, or whether we're in a market that's really hot, there's always going to be people who need a real estate agent, always. But what ends up happening is when things like this happen and you don't have a strong brand to fall back on, you end up getting lost in the sea of everybody else. So developing your personal brand matters because it keeps your sales, your getting of clients consistent no matter what the market is. So that's why it's so important to build a personal brand. Let's flip the screen. Okay, so what is a personal brand? I absolutely love how Jeff Bezos put it. He said, your brand is what other people say about you when you're not in the room. This is so powerful because what that means is that how you treat your clients, the experience that you give your clients is what they end up talking about. And that in and of itself is your brand. So what's different between a personal brand and a company brand? A company brand is an identity that's created for a business. So if we think of Nike, for example, their brand is all about motivation, empowerment, quality, and that, that's what sets them apart. That's their identity. But personal branding is bringing who you are to the table and showing up as that, and then having your clients want to work with you because of that. Flip. So as a realtor, every realtor is a personal brand, meaning that your clients are more likely to work with you because of who you are versus what brokerage you work for or what company you're with. So why do you want to build a personal brand? Why does this matter? Let's get rid of this. Oh no, that's too fast. That's too fast. We're back here. We're back here. Number one, it differentiates you from everyone else. So I want you to think about right now every other realtor in your area. I am willing to bet that most realtors in your area have similar websites, they have similar social media, they have similar marketing material across the board. So if that's the truth, then what's a potential client? Why is a potential client going to choose you over anyone else? If everyone's the same, what can they hold on to that will make them choose you over your competitors? So when you build a personal brand, what ends up happening is that you get the opportunity to stand out from everyone else. And that's the power. Differentiates you from everyone else. Number two, it attracts and repels for you. So when you build a really strong personal brand, you want one that not only attracts, but what repels. And this is something that is really hard to wrap your mind around, and not just for realtors. For everyone who's in business for themselves, we tend to want to chase that carrot and cast a very wide net and try to attract as many people as possible into our sphere, because we think in our minds that equals money. But what ends up happening is that when we try to attract too wide, our messaging becomes so diluted. And again, once again, we start to look like everyone else and sound like everyone else because we're afraid to sound different. So you want to build a brand that attracts and repels. And I'm going to talk about how to do that in a minute.
As they say, you're everything to no one.
Yeah, exactly. So you have to be really specific with your messaging so that you do repel. Weirdly enough, you really do want to repel. And I know that that sounds scary, but if you're repelling, what that actually means is that your messaging is so specific that you're attracting very specific people to your business, and you're attracting many of them to your business. That's the beauty. So as soon as you start repelling, you know you're doing something right, because people are going to naturally gravitate towards you. It's a beautiful thing. And last but not least, you'll create opportunity, and this allows your business to grow. So what I love about personal branding versus any other kind of branding is that if you build a brand based on your personality, then anytime you want to add something to your business, let's say you wanted to grow a little bit and you wanted to add staging or renovations or interior design or decor, whatever it is, you don't have to start from scratch. Because people are following you, you have an audience, you have a group of people who would work with you over anyone else, regardless of what you're putting out there, because they like you for who you are. So that is the third reason why you absolutely want to build a personal brand. It allows you the opportunity to grow in the future. You're not just stuck. Imagine having a business where you have like 200,000 followers, and then all of a sudden you want to shift gears, and the only way they've ever known you was your real estate listings, and you decided to shift a little bit. Now you have to start from scratch because these people will not be interested in what you have to do. So that's the beauty of building a personal brand. Let's flipper. Okay, so I like to break building a personal brand down into two parts. This is the easiest way to think about building a personal brand. You have your foundations and you have your aesthetics. Now, foundations are what I like to call the nitty-gritty work, because it's work that no one wants to do. I have worked with realtors for over 16 years, and I can tell you that when I did branding projects and realtors would come to me, they very rarely wanted to dive into this foundational work. And I learned that it's because diving into foundational work means diving into who you are as a human. And I think that as humans, we shy away from doing that kind of work because it's a little uncomfortable to do that. So when realtors would come to me for branding, they'd say, I just want a logo. Like, I don't want to do anything else.
That's
just
the cool, fun
logo.
stuff.
Pardon?
That's the cool, fun stuff.
Exactly. So when I break it down, I have a course called the Brand Recipe, and it's broken down into two parts, part 1 and part 2. Part 1 is the nitty gritty work, which is all these foundations. And then I called part 2, making it pretty, AKA the fun stuff, because this is the stuff that everyone loves to do. Like, who doesn't love to spend time on Pinterest, like looking at colors and fonts and logos? It's the fun stuff. But here's the thing, without doing the foundational work, you could create a beautiful aesthetic for your business, but it's going to be empty. What do I mean by that? Let's say that you do the foundational work and you realize that your values are fun, laid back, vibrant. You really like to have fun with real estate. You think that people take it too seriously and it's too stressful, and you want to remove that stigma. You want to make it light and airy and fun, and you want to take care of everything for your clients so they think it's fun too. That becomes a value that you discover. So then you go to create your logo and your colors, etc. And now you have a foundation of what those things should be. So you can go to color theory, which is also available in my brand recipe course, but you can Google it online and just say color theory. And what's going to happen is those keywords that you've discovered about your brand, about your values, you can match up to certain colors that represent those values, that automatically, when me as a consumer look at them, I feel that way. Colors that will make them feel laid back, colors that are more fun. So when you do the foundational work, do you see how that can influence your design? Whereas if you start with your aesthetics, what often ends up happening, and what happened in my experience, is that people will come back 2 weeks, 2 months, 3 months later and say, oh, you know what? I saw something so pretty the other day. I want that instead.
Feels more like me.
Why?
It feels more
Pardon?
like me. It feels more like me, right? You go see
Yeah,
something else.
that feels more
Oh,
like me.
wait,
That
that's
feels more
better
like me.
representation. Yeah. All the time.
Yeah, and it would happen all the time. It would happen so often. And I finally realized, you know what? I can't keep taking clients on who are not willing to do the foundational work, because had we started there, then you would know that that pretty logo, even though it's beautiful and you have shiny object syndrome is what I like to call it, you're looking over there saying, oh, that looks good. Now I want to try that. Instead of doing that, if you had done the foundational work, you would say, that's pretty, but it's not me, because I am fun, laid back, and vibrant. And those colors don't suggest that to my target audience. So I'm not going to, I love what you did, but I'm good with what I have here. That's the value of doing the foundational work. Whenever you do the foundational work, the second work, which is the fun stuff, is so much easier, because everything, there's a science to it, right? Like you can make it.
There's a science to it and there's a purpose to it.
Yeah, I love that word. Yes, there's purpose behind your choices. So instead of being distracted and not knowing which way to turn aesthetically, you have something to rely on. Always the way to go. Okay, so steps you can take today to start building your real estate brand. Number one is to start with your values. So we just talked about the importance of values. And I did this exercise years ago, and I found it extremely difficult, because if I'm not just going to throw out platitudes like integrity, honesty, I don't know, what's another one that people use all the time? Intelligence. Like if I'm not just going to use those, if I'm actually going to lead my business with values that are actually very, very near and dear to my heart, again, you have to do the self-discovery, which most people don't want to do. And so when I did that for my business, I remember going crazy. I was walking around going, I don't think I value anything. I don't think I have anything to bring to the table. I've got nothing. I don't even know. No, I have nothing. This is stupid. I definitely don't have any values. I don't know. And then I was speaking to my partner and he said, what are you talking about? You're the most value-driven person I know. And he started listing off all these values that I had. And I was like, oh yeah, you're right. You're so right. So my action step for you is, if you have trouble with this and it's an exercise that you've known that you had to do, but you just could never really dig deep enough to do it, ask people that you're close to, hey, what do you think that I value? Like if you were to list 3 things, what would you say they are? It will shock and amaze you when these words come out of their mouth, that you're going to be like, oh yeah, that's true. So action step number 1 for that is to ask someone close to you what they think you value. Number 2, you can ask what bugs you about your colleagues or industry. This has been so telling for me. As soon as you ask that question, oftentimes it is followed by a little bit of anger or resentment, right? And that anger is generally rooted where your values are. So if I say, what bugs you about your industry? And you say, well, a lot of my colleagues, they always complain about their clients. Like they complain about how much extra stuff they have to do for them. And me personally, I don't really generally feel that way. I actually just helped my clients paint their house the other day because I think it's fun. When you get down there to that moment where you realize, hey, like I like to help my clients paint their house. Well, then you've realized that people who don't do that, it bugs you. That's a value. So number 2, what bugs you about your colleagues or your industry? Think about mainstream things that you're constantly talking to your friends about, where you're like, I hate this. Like I hate when realtors do that, or I hate when companies do this. That's generally an indication of what you value. Number 3, get clear on your brand vision. Oh, wait, I had one more action step for number 2. Decide on what, start with your values. What makes you different from other realtors? So your third action step for discovering your values is what makes you different. And that's kind of connected to number 2. So like we just had the painting example, that would make you different, right? Like if you can dive deep and be like, I don't know why realtors are always complaining about helping their clients. I mean, I just helped so-and-so paint their house because I love painting. Well, hello, that's an amazing marketing tool. That's an amazing thing to talk about, that's the kind of realtor that you are. You've just differentiated yourself completely, and that makes you stand out. So dive deep. And I think I just moved ahead a little bit too much. So step 2, decide who you want to attract. You have to know who you're marketing to before you can create a brand with impact. Again, if you're casting a wide net, you're speaking to everyone and you're speaking to no one, and you think that you're speaking to everyone. I forget what that saying is. When you cast a wide net, I don't remember. Matt, do you remember that saying?
No, I don't. I wish I did.
Like when you speak to everyone, you speak to no one. Is that it? When you try speaking to everyone, you speak to no one. It's something like that. Anyway, I'm sure you guys have heard it before. Yes. But it's absolutely true. It's muted. It quiets your message. No one can really see it. They kind of just scroll on by if we're using Instagram as an example. Also, when you send out farming flyers and people hold them in their hands, if they look the same as everyone else's, where do they end up? In the recycling bin, like right away. So you have to lead with what makes you different, and you have to know who you're speaking to. So you have to figure out your audience. And this is very tricky to talk about because I know that there's a huge push to find your niche market. And I've worked with realtors for so long, and anytime there was discussion around trying to find a niche, it was so loaded because, again, you're not sure what niche to choose. You might make a mistake and choose a niche that doesn't really resonate with you down the road. So after many, many, many branding projects, I came up with an exercise that works 100 times better. And it's called Your One Person. And what I want you to do is think back to your favorite client, the one that if the technology existed, which I think it does, you could clone them 1,000 times over and just work with that one person for the rest of your career. Who would that be? When you can hold that person front of mind, that becomes your audience. Next time you create any piece of marketing material for your business, if you hold that one person front of mind, I promise you're going to have very specific messaging around that marketing.
Yeah. One of the things we hear a lot too about the niche that's really interesting is that people believe that when I focus, or niche sometimes has a negative connotation to it, but it's really about focus. And they think niche, oh my gosh, it's small. That means I'm not going to be able to be big. There's not going to be enough for me. I need to tackle multiple niches in order for me to build a big business. And it works almost a complete opposite. And it's not the fact that you can't go tackle multiple niches, but you go dominate a niche, and then you go dominate your second niche, and then you go dominate your third niche, and you branch from there.
Yeah, I think this is exactly it. But if you're having trouble with that concept of niching, then all you do is you use this your one person exercise. Because here's what ends up happening. Let's say your one person is Ron. Okay. He liked baseball. He was an animal activist, and you guys loved shopping at the Gap together. Okay. Those were the 3 things that when you think of him, you're like, that's why I really liked working with him. All of a sudden, when you go to design something for your business, or you're speaking to somebody who's going to design it for you, you have this context. They're going to ask you, well, who am I marketing to? Who am I trying to attract? And you're going to say, Ron, he's a baseball lover. He's this, he's that. Here are some other things about him that he's about. And then that designer, marketer, whatever, they're going to go off and they're going to design something for Ron. When you put that out into the world, now you're thinking, but dang, like, I don't mind working with people who aren't like Ron. I'm okay with working with Sally and Sarah and Molly. I'm good with that. Like, I don't want to just market to Ron. You're not just marketing to Ron. Here's the beauty of this. You put that out into the world, and here's Ron. Okay. Baseball, animal activist. What was the third one? Here are his likes. Okay. And then what ends up happening is that you're attracting all these prongs, right? All these things that Ron likes, you're attracting in everybody else. And then that circle just keeps growing. You're attracting so many more people than you think you are. But here's the beauty of doing it like this. When you have focused messaging, this is where you attract and repel, because you're only going to attract this client that you absolutely loved working with and everybody who fits into that sphere. So you're going to love your job, but also you're going to repel the people who don't match that, who aren't really interested in that messaging. And that is what's so cool. And if you think that that little nugget is small, because your messaging is so specific now that it stands out and it doesn't drown amongst everybody else's messaging that's exactly the same as one another. So number 2, decide who you want to attract. And if you have trouble with discovering what your niche is, another thing I wanted to mention about that too is once you do the 1-person exercise, it can lead to a niche naturally. Over time, what ends up happening is that you notice commonalities amongst this person that you liked working with, and now you're attracting a whole bunch of Rons into your sphere. You're like, oh, you know what I noticed? A lot of these Rons are first-time home buyers, or a lot of these Rons are looking for investment properties, or a lot of these Rons are looking to downsize. This is a similarity amongst them. You're going to see that, and then it helps you choose your niche. And number 3, get clear on your brand visuals. This is the one that everybody wants to have fun with. So in order to get clarity around your brand visuals, you want to consider your values and consider your audience. Those are the first 2 things. Remember when we talked about they'll influence those visuals? That's once you know your values, you can head to color theory. Just type in color theory in Google, and you're going to see a whole bunch of colors and their psychological impact on consumers. And so you want to get very clear on your values, and you want to know who you're marketing to so you can keep them front of mind as you're creating anything for your business, anything at all. And some places that you can go to start creating these things. My favorite is Pinterest. I do every time I have a branding project or any project, I always start with Pinterest. It is like where everything starts. When I was working one-on-one with realtors, I used Pinterest as we had joint boards where we would pin everything that we liked. Pinterest is a great place to go. If you don't know where to start with colors, what you can do is head to a search engine, either Pinterest or Google, and type in what your values are with the words color palette after. So you have, the value of fun. Let's say my brand is fun. So fun color palette, right? You can play around with that as well. And then I just mentioned the second place, which is Google. It's Pinterest and Google, and you will never get lost going to either of those places.
Yep. There's tons of resources around there and around that. So this is, I think, a perfect opportunity we're going to transition to talking about a little bit of leads and listings, and then how you can actually potentially put this to work. So one of the things that's very interesting, and this slide is funny to me because it says the old way, Zillow and MLS.com, which aren't really that old, or Zillow in particular isn't that old, yet in the real estate world, it's extremely old in terms of the way marketing is done. The new way is all about social media. It's all about rich and dynamic content, and it's all about mobile. You find these things a lot there in terms of how you attract the right person to your specific property, or as Melanie talks about, you as a specific person that they want to work with. And as we move forward on these type of things, there's also new ways of showing, when we're talking specifically about properties, where it's not just necessarily a photo all the time, it's a brand for that specific property. Who is that specific buyer on that property, and being able to create marketing materials that represent you as a personal brand, but also the aesthetic and the feeling of that house or that property that will attract the right buyer. It's almost the same thing, but at a property level versus at a personal level, right? The other part of it is buyers these days, depending on who they are, expect things to be done in a certain way. Things are highly targeted, right? The world's gone from generic to highly targeted, and probably a lot of us say too targeted based on what these social media companies know and things like that. But they expect this rich dynamic content. They expect visuals that pop and that feel, I don't want to say professional because that's not right, but
they definitely expect
cool.
like perfectly staged homes,
exactly, with the beautiful imagery on the background, where you see it all the time now, where the windows have the beautiful sunset on them and in the sky, it's there. And then obviously rich content in terms of video and movement and things that say what it can be for me as videos, right? And this is what's interesting. You have your real-time reels and TikTok where you're just showing your personality and providing commentary as you walk through a property, to as basic as taking your staging photos and putting them on basically slides that look like a video that walk people through with a little bit of music and maybe some text to show or complement what you can do. But I think when it really comes to personal brand, if you're comfortable with it, having YouTube and TikTok is one of the ways for people that people expect now for you to do that. Melanie, do you have issues or have the conversation with your folks about how they use these type of mediums in particular? Because it can be scary to put yourself out there on video or on TikTok, right? And how do you work with people in that way?
I mean, do you know, one of my biggest pet peeves is when you have influencers or people who've been doing this for a really long time, and they'll get really close to the camera and they'll say, if I can do it, you can do it. I get so upset when I hear that, because my reaction to that is, well, you can do it, and I want to throw up every time I think of doing it. So why don't we start with how you got to where you got to, where you're so comfortable, people are eating everything up that you're saying, you're like not sweating through your clothes. Why don't we start there? Like, give me the steps to get there. So I love this question, because that's exactly what I'm all about. It's like, well, yeah, I do sometimes I can feel like throwing up before I go on camera. But what really helped me was figuring out why. So I think that before, I was even terrified to hold a phone up in front, like, when you go on IG stories and you just record like this.
Yeah.
And it's pre-recorded, so I could delete and re-record. And that was even making me nervous. So if you're somebody who's really uncomfortable with video, there are a few strategies. Number one, get really familiar with why. For me, one of the reasons, I'm going to be brutally honest, I was a little bit vain. And when I turned the camera on myself, I remember thinking, this doesn't look like what I see in the mirror. And it was so distracting that I couldn't get my messaging out. So I just jotted that down. I jotted down everything. And then one by one, I found solutions for them so that it would become easier for me to go on video, because here's the thing. Video is where it's at and it's not going anywhere. And as much as I hate that, because I do not like video, it is here to stay. So we have to figure out ways to get comfortable. And the way that I did that was seriously like writing things down. And that first one where my face was distracting, now I use filters. I know some people hate filters, but what it does is it makes my face less distracting to me so I can get my message out. Whatever works.
Yeah,
like, just do it.
Yeah, one of the thing, and that's the thing, taking the first step of just doing it, to do the first one, the second one, putting it out there, feeling uncomfortable. And then if you have that foundation of things, you're going to get the right people looking at it, who it's going to resonate, and then you're going to get positive feedback and positive reinforcement. And then you'll want to do the next one. It's kind of like giving a presentation, doing a webinar for this, or even a presentation on stage where I always like to tell people, you are the expert. When you're talking about a topic or you're talking about this specific property, you are the foremost expert and people want to learn from you. So they're not focusing on how well you're saying it. They're not focusing on what you look like or how the quality of the video. They're consuming the content to try to learn, to see how they can use it, or in this case, how that property could work for them. Right.
Right.
And if you're the expert of that, you could don't even have to be in front of the camera, but you're giving them the details of this that say, hey, I need to come to the showing, or I need to come look at this property. Same with educational content or whatever other marketing things you're going to do to build your brand as a real estate agent or as a brokerage firm across there. But man, it's so difficult for people to just take that first step and just post that
It's
first
impossible.
one.
I want to say that it's more than difficult. Sometimes it's like it's one of the most difficult things that you have to do. But I did it. I overcame it. I'm not joking. I wanted to throw up when I first started doing it. And now I can go on IG stories with no makeup, messy bun, don't even care, because I have a message that I want to put out. And I'm like, I don't have time to go do my makeup. I'm just going to go on and say, and here's another thing that really, really, really helped me that I really want to share with you. I stopped I was not invested in the outcome. It was not about the outcome. I didn't care how many people DM'd me. I didn't care how many people were interacting with that IG story. I didn't care. What I cared about was that I did it. So I was far more invested in the process, in the actual keeping a promise to myself, saying, I'm just going to go on for 15 seconds. And then that's it. That's the only expectation I have for myself.
Absolutely.
I don't care if no one watches this.
Yep.
I'm doing this for me.
Yep.
And that helped tremendously, because what keeps us from doing it most of the time? People are going to judge us. People are going to laugh at us. People are going to think that I'm stupid. People, it's going to kill my business. We have all these crazy ideas. Let's bring it down home to reality. And that really helped. So now that's my mentality, but for reals, like I don't even have to like talk myself into it. I'm just like, listen, I got something to say. Let's go.
Yeah,
and
that's
then
fantastic.
And I couldn't care less if somebody doesn't respond. It wasn't like that in the beginning. And just know that there's going to be steps that you have to take to overcome whatever insecurities you have. And it's absolutely possible and doable. You can do it.
Yeah. And so transitioning to growing your online presence, I think this is what we hear first, definitely on a day-to-day basis. And it's, how do I continue to build my brand or build my customer base or stay relevant in a market like this, where there's a lot of ups and downs, and maybe, it's easy for an agent to understand how to market properties or to deal with the transaction. It's very difficult for them to understand, what do I do when I don't have that, or when that's not going on, or the speed and rate of transactions is much slower and there's gaps in between. I can't keep posting a new image of on social, a new image of a house over and over again, or whatever, or try to sell another feature point or whatever. The way you can do that is become and share your wealth of knowledge or your tone of voice, what you were saying. Hey, I have something to say. I'm just going to say it. And that can be everything about the neighborhood of that property. It could be financial tips about what's going on and whatever you're interested in, or continue to move on different items. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
Oh, no, I love that so much. And I think that like something else that a lot of realtors don't realize is that you're building a personal brand. So bring your person into it. If you have a crazy hobby, like you play the ukulele and you think, well, nobody wants to know about that. Everybody wants to know about that. Make that part of your strategy. Make that a connection point, because you're not just going to attract ukulele players. You're going to attract people who think that's freaking cool that you can do that.
Yeah.
They're going to be so excited to connect with you.
Yeah. And also people who want to work with authentic people who put themselves out there, because they'll know that, hey, I can trust this person, but also to do a good job for me, but also that they're going to do what it takes on my behalf of dealing with someone else. If they're willing to put themselves out there like that, they're going to put themselves out there to get the best deal or find what I want and cater to my needs. And I think
I love that.
those different
you know what? I never thought about it from that perspective. I love that so much. I think that's so great. That showing a part of your personality actually builds trust and confidence for what you do as a realtor. I've never thought of that before.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
Wonderful.
And people like to work with people that they trust. Ultimately.
Absolutely. 100%.
So here's many different things. We don't have to go into each one, but different ways to think about it. And so the other part of it is, and this kind of ties to the Xara platform a little bit, both of these is Print marketing is not dead. So it's not just always about social. People still like tangible things in their hands. They like to come to an open house. They like to have you show up on a listing appointment and give them something that when you walk away, it's sitting on that dining room table or on that coffee table. But when they look at it, they're like, I know Melanie and I know who she is, and I want to work with her. And I believe in that material is representative of what she just told me and what I see in the online world as well. And so there needs to be this consistency that happens across there. And a lot of time when you're building a brand and you're doing these things, it might not turn into a lead today, but most probably it's going to turn into a lead in the future. And again, people get caught up in this, like you were saying on the videos, oh, I don't care about how many people like it. People are so caught up in the instant satisfaction, and building a brand is a long-term initiative. It's not a immediate instant result. It takes time. And a lot of times you'll find people that come to you that if you ask them, they're like, oh no, maybe I saw something over there or there. It wasn't a specific, oh, I saw this post specifically and I clicked on it or whatever. It's something that I've seen I've seen your presence.
And, they say that it takes up to between 7 to 12 touch points before somebody even considers looking deeper. So when I used to do a lot of print marketing back in the day, and a lot of my clients were sending out those postcards to their farm area. And they would always say, I don't know, this is such a waste of money because I just sent out 5,000 and nobody called me. And my first question would be like, well, how many times did you do that? Once. Okay, well, you're going to have to do that at least 100 more times before something actually starts happening with that, because you need 7 to 12 touch points. And those touch points don't have to be 12 postcards. They like Matt just said, it can be, oh, they saw a social media post, but then they also saw your flyer, and then they also saw this, and then they also saw your TikTok. It could be anything.
And they probably walked around the neighborhood that they're interested in and attended a couple open houses where your competition is and got one of their flyers and other things like that. So
yeah,
it's all part of building the brand and the quality of those materials and the consistency and all that other stuff. So that's fantastic. So keeping up with, let's dive into the next session. I know we're getting a little bit long on time here, so I want to be respectful of that.
Sorry, that is so my fault.
This is great. The recording will be available. So all those fantastic tips that Melanie talked about earlier will all be there for everyone. But as we go, so solutions for busy realtors, right? There's a couple ways that you can achieve this. One, you can do nothing. You can continue. If you're doing nothing today, that's what you can do. But the two primary ways to do it is you can outsource, you can hire professionals to handle your marketing for you, or you can actually do it in-house and do it that in an automated and scalable way that gives you control, but actually saves you time. And so let's talk about that. This is about Xara and bringing this together. Xara, from our perspective, is an automated marketing platform to help you with your visual communication. It's about executing on Melanie's services, building your brand, building your foundation, creating your visual palette, and now putting that to action across your social media, across print, and across any other electronic distribution channel that you would like to do, ensuring that everything that you produce is on brand, everything that you produce looks and feels like you, from not only a tone of voice, but from the messaging. It's automated and automatically connecting with your MLS. So it's pulling in and creating materials for you in your defined templates and bringing that all together. It's allowing you to create one time and then using that across, like creating one social media post and then automatically using and formatting that to use across the different channels, and then turning it into a print document that you could just print out and use as well. So creating this, taking that a step further, and more importantly, when it comes to team-oriented approaches and broker-oriented approaches, this scales across all agents and everybody in your team. One of the challenges that we see all the time is when in a team environment, people want to sometimes promote themselves too much and not promote the property or the firm. And then they start getting materials that look all different. And then it's hurting the reputation of the teammates that you're working with and you, because everything looks different. Somebody might have a listing here, somebody might have a listing here, and you're in the same group, yet you look completely different. And this is one of the big areas of that consistency that is super critical to a lot of our customers. And so, this is my little sales pitch, but in general, we work with a lot of different firms across the board, big ones, small ones, individual agents. Our product is extremely scalable. So if you're just a single agent that wants to then implement your brand, your foundation and your brand into the Xara platform and have one click, hey, my materials are done, you can do it at a complete brokerage level for hundreds of agents all at one time creating content. I think Ethan was on the phone today. Ethan, if you're there, thanks a lot for the quote. We appreciate it. Thanks for being a longtime customer. So, and Melanie, please tell them about 4th Street Creative.
So, 4th Street Creative is my marketing company, and we just released the Mark Collective, which is a monthly membership for realtors who want help building their brand. You know that you need a brand, you know that you want a brand, but where do you start? So whether you're a new realtor who has no idea where to start because you're just starting out, or you're a seasoned realtor who's never done the work, but you know that it's important to do, this is a monthly membership that will guide you through it easily. It's a no fluff membership. So when you get in, you get access to a course that will basically walk you through everything we talked about today. It's the blueprint, but it also has everything that you need to create your brand. It has color palettes, fonts, it has brand kits that then you could bring into Xara and make that work for you even more. But we have trainings, curated galleries. Every month you're going to get social media posts, captions, plus strategy, because as we just talked about, it's not enough to just post. There needs to be strategy behind it. You need to know why you're posting, for who are you posting for, all of those things. So that's every month you would get that strategy, templates and captions. You also have marketing templates because your business is not just about social media. You need other things. So every month we walk you through one action step on how you can build your brand. And then you also have access to the brand recipe, which is your 2-step course. It's 10 modules in total, I should say 10 lessons in total, and it's under 2 hours.
Yeah.
So I understand how busy realtors are. I made sure that it was short and sweet and would get you to where you got to go.
Yeah. It's fantastic. So, I mean, that's great. We're having you on the webinar today. There's just a perfect compliment because people think, oh, I'm going to sign up to Xara and I'm going to send this out and I'm going to get a bunch of results. And if they haven't done any of the work with you about foundational work about who am I targeting and who my ideal customer is, my ideal customer profile, and then building a brand, a look and feel to represent that. If that's not in the materials that you're creating and distributing, it's, it doesn't.
There's a disconnect. There's always going to be a disconnect.
You're never going to get the results that you want. So we have some key takeaways here. Build your brand, turn that into compelling content, keep active and grow your online presence. Even if you don't get likes, continue to do it. There's these things called offline visibility, which means that people see you even when they don't interact with your content. And then continue to, on the other stuff, distribute things and distribute that content in many different ways to continue to be visible in multiple ways, multiple channels. So for today, we're all about the one-on-one experience. So both Melanie and her team and Xara and our team, please contact us. We have the ability for us to do one-on-one calls with you, Melanie for her services and Xara for our platform, to figure out how we can both help you succeed in growing your business. And that's what we're here. Hopefully the webinar helped you and gave you some tips, but we would love to hear from you. And we look forward to spending some one-on-one time with each of you as possible to help you and achieve success together.
Mhm.
Any parting words?
Me?
Yes.
Thank you for coming. I'm always glad I can talk about this stuff for hours, and I hope that you got some, like Matt said, some insight, something that's tangible that you can start doing today to make your life a little bit easier when it comes to branding and marketing yourself. And thank you so much for having me. This was
Yeah.
a lot of fun.
That was fantastic. Thank you so much. And the webinar has been recorded. We'll be sending up follow-up emails to everybody with the slides, the recording, and links for all the contact information if you don't get it here. And we look forward to hearing with you. Thank you for joining, Melanie. Fantastic. We appreciate it. We'll end the webinar now. Thank you.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
bye.